Hey everyone, it's Matt from Unbearable 73. Time for another book review. This is going to be The Great Escape by Paul Brickhill. So let's first give you the reference of what The Great Escape is. And the most you probably know it as a movie that came out in 1963. Most notably starring Steve McQueen, James Gardner, Rich Attenborough, James Donald, Charles Bronson, John Pleasance, James Coates, a star-studded cast of British and American actors, right? Directed by John Sturges, screenplay by James Clavell of the Shogun fame and W.R. Burnett, and it's one of my top 10 war films. A lot of people love this movie, and what you don't initially know, although I think they do mention based on a true story or whatever, but it's based on a very true story. Well, it's based on a book that is based on a true story, right? And the book is this. I have the Goodreads on the screen for you, and it was written by Paul Brickhill. So let's start with who is Paul Brickhill, right? He is a Australian World War II veteran of the Australian Royal Air Force, I believe it's called. He's written several books, most notably this one. He himself was involved in the actual Great Escape. To keep it simple, in the actual Great Escape itself, 73 soldiers made the escape. Several hundred of them helped them make the tunnels, of which the one that was functional is the one that they did the escape in. And so that's the background, right? Now, to talk about the book itself. Now, my review, again, this is not an in-depth review of, like, I'm breaking down a chapter, I'm going a character, blah, 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 right? I'm just telling you what I think about the book, what I feel about the book, and I'm going to recommend it, right? So, first of all, it is one of the most incredibly well-written books. I include all fiction, all non-fiction books I've ever read. If you were asking me the most well-written books of all time, I'm going to say The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, of course, Tolkien's work, right? And Silmarillion and stuff he wrote and all that. And then after that, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, this book, Hellspark by Janet Kagan, I could name some other, Dune. I could name other books and all of it, but like that's the level of company in terms of not the content of the story, just the quality of the writing in the book. Okay, so there's a lot of information to convey about this story, and this author does it in such a way that makes you care about the characters, care what they're doing, even don't take this the wrong way, even care about what some of the more sympathetic German peoples and officers were to what was going on in this circumstance, right? So the quality of writing is excellent, 10 out of 10, right? So the next thing to do is discuss the story. Now, there are significant differences between the novel and the fiction, the book, which is nonfiction, and the movie, which is fiction that is loosely based on the book. Now, I'm not going to go crazy with the changes, but I will say that in the movie, in the novel, the only American in the book, the only American involved was an American who had enlisted in the British Air Force. Okay. Now, if you watch Masters of the Air, you will know I think they sort of allude to the Great Escape there, because it was at Stalag Luft 3 and the other prison camps where they kept moving all of the Allied prisoners, right? Because the German military wanted to keep them as hostages to negotiate the peace, to trade their soldiers back and all that, right? And the prisoners that were taken care of by the German military were, to within their resources, very well treated by them. There was little. The German military didn't torture them for the most part, though there was some extremists there. They fed them as well as they could. They did not execute them simply for escaping. A lot of escape attempts. The officers, especially the British officers and the Australians, was constantly escaping, constantly digging tunnels, constantly trying to forge paperwork, all sorts of stuff just to get out. And they would just recover them, put them back in the prison camps. Now, of course, the darkness was when the Gestapo would get involved. They would often torture them and sometimes kill prisoners, even though it was against the Geneva Conventions, right? If you Germany, by the way, was the first nation to sign the Geneva Conventions between World War I and World War II, and under the Geneva Convention, if you execute prisoners, you basically say, "Oh, to go for the other country to execute your prisoners." Now, so they changed a lot. Where in the movie, a lot more Americans were involved, and more of them got away in the movie. And in the book, only 3 of them got away in the book. Okay. Now, also in the book is a bit more tragic in that it goes into detail about all the executions. Because what happened is they escaped. There was this huge escape. It basically got to Hitler, and Hitler said, "I'll execute all of them." But then one of his inner men, Himmler or whoever was running the Luftwaffe, because the Luftwaffe was the one with all the prisoners. They said, "No, if we do this, they'll just execute our prisoners." Now, not that Hitler really cared about his own men, but for whatever, I guess he trusted his advisors, and he said, "Okay, only execute half of them." Right. So the Gestapo was given control of rounding them up, and they basically they did evaluations of which prisoners were more likely to be politically valuable upon surrender and turning, and they executed the other ones. And now the movie has it as a single mass execution. It wasn't that way, and of course the book actually goes into the post-war investigation into the execution, for which people were tried, convicted, and hung, like executed for that, because it's a war crime basically to have done what they did. The movie basically has that they all rounded up, like the 50 of the escapees, and gunned down, and the others were killed in the process, and the others all escaped basically. So, like they had, I think Charles Bronson's character making it to Switzerland or Sweden, one of the two of them. No one made it. No one made it there. 3 people made it back to England, and there were 3 British guys, obviously, because they were all British in the movie, except for one American who was in the British Army. Now, in the movie, you see them doing all sorts of things to dig these tunnels, but that doesn't even cover 1/10 of what these guys did. Now, I don't know that I'm advocating they should have tried to escape or whatever, but I mean, maybe they had an obligation to under the laws of the war that the officers had to try to escape in order to keep the enemy's resources occupied or whatever. That was brought up by Roger. What was his name? Let me look at. Roger Bartlett, okay? Because then he has a different name, and obviously in the movie when they fictionalized him. And but the book goes into a lot of the details with how it was ingenious what these guys did. Like they had engineers among them who would take like material from these food tins they would get, and turn them into precision instruments so they could work on radios or electronics or do fine forgery. They came up with special field rations made from like raisin sugar and some beeswax or something like that. And, they made actual fake uniforms and civilian clothing from, stolen military uniforms. I mean, the level of detail work that they did, to planning these tunnels and this escape, the book is just incredible. It's detail after detail, but it's so well written that it just you understand what was going on by the description, right? And the other major difference I do want to point out is the book details the aftermath of the Great Escape and post-war when members of Scotland Yard and British policing were sent throughout to hunt down who actually did the executions and so forth, to arrest them and round them up and all that. So, I heartily recommend you read this book. It's an incredible read. It will hold up for you so you can see. I actually have in my thumbnail. I have the cover. It's a quick read. It's not. It's only about not even 300 pages, and it's there's some nice photos in here. Let me see if I can find something for you. There's some photos and some diagrams because the Germans basically documented the tunnels like this, for example. Let me make myself a big. Like this, for example, is the baffle that they made to pump air into the tunnel so they had fresh air underground, right? And this is the German officers looking at it afterwards because it was an ingenious thing that they made. That they made it, you know. And see if I find here. Here's an example of the tools that they made in the book. The calipers that they made, the engineers made, and then the one above that is the. Let's see. Let's try another one. Yeah. Of course, I have pictures of many of the men who went on the escape. You know. Right. Again, this book is an excellent book. I highly recommend you read it. And that's all I can say. It's 10 out of 10. It's 10 out of 10. It's an awesome book. I hope you all have a great weekend. This is Matt signing off on Rebel 73. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike. Have questions below, ask them. Share this out if you can. Thank you very much.